Hi, my name's Maddie Gasson and welcome to this week's episode of True Crime Corner. On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing the case of Katherine Knight. Katherine Mary Knight was the first Australian woman to be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. She was convicted for the murder of her partner, John Charles Thomas Price, in February 2000, and Knight is currently imprisoned at the Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre in New South Wales. Knight stabbed Price to death, skinned him, then put his skin on a meat hook and cooked his head and parts of his body with the intention of feeding them to his children. Katherine Knight was born and raised in an unconventional and dysfunctional family environment. Knight's mother, Barbara, had been married to Jack and lived with him in a small town of Aberdeen in New South Wales, Hunter Valley. Barbara and Jack had 4 sons before Barbara began an adulterous relationship with Ken Knight, a friend and co-worker of her husband. Local backlash forced Barbara and Ken to leave Aberdeen and move away. None of her 4 sons went with her. The 2 older boys continued to reside with their father, while the 2 younger boys were sent to be raised by an aunt in Sydney. Barbara had 4 additional children with Ken, including 2 twin girls, born in 1955 in Tenterfield. Katherine Knight was the younger of these twins. Knight's father was an alcoholic who used violence and intimidation to rape his wife up to 10 times a day. Knight's mother, in turn, often told her daughter intimate details of her sex life and how much she hated sex and men. Later, when Knight complained to her mother that one of her partners wanted her to take part in a sex act she did not want to perform, her mother told her to put up with it and stop complaining. In February 2000, a series of assaults on Price culminated with Knight stabbing him in the chest. Price ended up kicking her out of the house, and on the 29th of February, he stopped at the Scone Magistrates Court on his way home to work and took out a restraining order in an attempt to keep her away from both himself and his children. That afternoon, Price told his co-workers that if he did not come to work the next day, it would be because Knight had murdered him. His co-workers pled for him not to return home, but he stated that he was afraid Knight would kill his children if he did not return. Price returned home to find out that Knight had sent the children away for a sleepover at a friend's house. He then spent that evening with the neighbours before returning home and going to bed at 11 p.m. Earlier that day, Knight had brought new black lingerie and had videotaped all her children while making comments which have since been interpreted as a crude will. She later arrived at Price's house while he was sleeping and sat watching television for a few minutes before having a shower. She then woke Price and they had sex, after which he fell asleep. At 6 a.m. the next day, the neighbour became concerned that Price's car was still in the driveway and that he did not arrive to work. Both the neighbour and a co-worker tried knocking on Price's bedroom window to wake him, but they alerted police after noticing blood on the front door. Police arrived at 8 a.m. and found Price's body. She had stabbed Price with a butcher's knife while he was sleeping, and according to the blood evidence, he awoke and tried to turn on the light before attempting to escape, while Knight chased him through the house. He managed to open the front door and get outside, but he either stumbled backwards inside or was dragged back into the hallway, where he finally died after bleeding out. Price's autopsy revealed that he had been stabbed at least 37 times in both the front and the back of his body, with many of the wounds extending into vital organs. Several hours after Price had died, Knight skinned him and hung the skin from a meat hook of a door to their lounge room. She then decapitated Price and cooked parts of his body, serving up the meat with baked potato, pumpkin, beetroot, zucchini, cabbage, yellow squash and gravy in 2 settings at the dinner table, along with a note beside each plate, each having the name of which one of Price's children on it. She was preparing to serve his body parts to his children. A 3rd meal was thrown on the back of the lawn for unknown reasons, and it is speculated that Knight had attempted to eat it but could not. Sometime later, Knight arranged a body with the left arm draped over an empty 1.25 litre soft drink bottle with the legs crossed. This was claimed in court to be an act of defilement, demonstrating Knight's contempt for Price. Knight left a handwritten note on top of a photograph of Price, bloodstained and covered with small pieces of flesh, and it read, "Time got you back, John, for raping my daughter. You to Beck for Ross. For little John. Now play with little John's dick, John Price." Knight's initial offer to plead guilty to manslaughter was rejected, and she was arraigned on the 2nd of March 2001 on the charge of murdering Price, to which she entered a plea of not guilty. Her trial was initially fixed for the 23rd of July 2001, but it was adjourned due to the fact her counsel's illness, and it was refixed for 15th of October 2001. On the 8th of November, she was sentenced to life imprisonment and refused to fix a non-parole period and ordered that her papers be marked never to be released, the first time that this has ever been imposed on a woman in Australian history. In June 2006, Knight appealed the life sentence, claiming that a penalty of life in prison without possibility of parole was too severe for killing. Thank you for tuning in for the last week's episode of True Crime Corner. I hope you enjoyed this series, and don't forget to like and subscribe.